Okay, this Cadillac has a window regulator problem. It's a very common problem on these Devilles. This is a 2000 Deville. I believe the issue, well, happened in those early 2000s, mid-2000s Devilles, maybe Sevilles, DTS, STS, stuff like that. Very common for the cables to give way in the regulator. So what you'll find is that you can still hear the motor running, but the window's not going anywhere. Now, usually what will happen is the window will roll down, which is what's happened here. It's all the way down, but then it won't roll up because the cable that pulls it back up has snapped away from the regulator. Okay, so we're going to show how to do this one. I've done the driver's side door and the passenger side door, the rear door on this one before, but this one's given away now. So this is the passenger side front door that we'll do today. They're pretty much all the same basic idea. If you can do one, you should be able to do them all. So the first step is to take off the door panel. Okay, behind the door handle here, there's a little plastic trim piece. You just kind of got to pry up on it with your fingers. You don't even need any tools, and it will pop out like that, revealing a Phillips screw. We'll take that Phillips screw out. Okay. Phillips screws out. Just keep the parts down here in the door. Okay, now at the door lock here, you see there's a little tab here that holds the plastic trim piece on. Just pull that tab out with a little tiny screwdriver, little flat blade screwdriver. Pull the tab out, and then you can pop the piece of plastic off. Okay, now we start pulling the door panel away from the door. You can use different types of pry bars or plastic trim tools, but basically you just need to get behind all the way around along the side, bottom, and up the other side, and just start pulling the clips out. Hopefully you don't break too many of them. I mean, these cars are getting pretty old, so the plastic is getting a little bit brittle. But basically you just want to get up behind here and pull the door panel away all the way around. All the way around. Eventually, hopefully without breaking too many clips, you can pull that door panel off. And there's an electrical connector here just to separate the panel from the wiring. Okay, now with that electrical plug disconnected, the door panel is separate from the door. We can start getting at the regulator. So there are two T25 Torx screws, one here and one here. And then there's a bunch of these little white clips around the outside of the door. So to get these white clips out, you actually have to push in the middle of them. And then once you do that, then they'll be free to pop out like that. So don't start prying on them because you'll break them. And you can ask me how I found that out. But the trick with these is it's a really good design, really. This is like a weather shield, really nice hard plastic with a seal around it. Really nice design that they used here with these reusable clips. And push the middle part in. That's going to release the clip, then you can kind of pull out on it, and that clip will pop out. Great design. So we'll go all the way around the outside and pull all those little white clips out, and our two Torx T25. And then we'll be closer to getting at the regulator. These Torx things are kind of stuck in there with a little plastic clip. Okay, now we're getting close. There's the window motor, and here's the regulator, and there's the window sitting down there on the bottom. Okay, and you don't need to take off any of these plugs here for the door module, because really you're able to push the door weather panel here out of the way enough to work on the regulator, and all the wiring kind of goes through here anyway, so you'd have to pull all those plugs through here if you wanted to separate this whole thing and get it out of the way. It would be a bit more work, and really there's enough wire here where you can kind of get access to what we need to get access to. So I think we'll be okay just leaving all this stuff plugged in together into the module and just push the module out of the way. Okay, so now we'll be able to move the window up and down by hand. Just by dragging it up. Now down here, okay, there are two spots, one here, a bolt here, that basically crimps this. So the window basically sits in this little channel here, and this just tightens the channel into the window to grip the window to hold it up and down. Okay, so in order to release the window from the regulator, so we're going to be taking the regulator all out, you need to kind of move the window around and use a 10mm to just loosen. You don't have to take these bolts out, or these nuts out, but you just want to loosen these nuts so we can release the rubber grip on the window. Okay, so on that side we'll do that, and then over here you can see, you can kind of reach it in here pretty good. Just a socket or even a 10mm wrench, and you can get on there and just loosen this one a couple of turns. Okay, socket might be a little better, but I'm able to get it with the wrench as well. Just loosen those a couple so we can pull the window out. Okay, then once that's loosened, those two bolts are loosened, you see the track will pop down, and then the window's just kind of sitting there. So you want to raise the window up to the top because we got to get it out of the way to remove the regulator. So you can kind of just push it up, push and pull it up all the way to the top. And then, so it doesn't fall down, you can just tape it at the top. I'm just going to tape it at the top here, just so it stays up and doesn't fall down on us while we're working on the regulator. Okay, we're finally ready to remove the regulator and the window motor. You see there is the electrical plug here. We can just pop that off here now while we're thinking about it. Let's get rid of, it's on both ends. Pain in the ass. Alright, we'll pop the rest of it off later. There's 3 bolts here, 10mm, nuts rather. 10. 10. 10. So with a wrench or a socket, we can loosen those 3 nuts. Take them right off, in fact. 1, 2, and then 3. Take those right out. Now with those 3 bolts out, the regulator should come out. It's a bit of a puzzle. You kind of got to wiggle it, move it around. Eventually you'll be able to find the plug and get it out of the way. And eventually you'll be able to wiggle it out. So there is the regulator. There's the motor, which we'll reuse. These motors tend to be quite reliable. There's really no reason to buy the whole thing with the motor and everything, because you can swap with 3 bolts, which we'll show in a minute, the motor, which are quite good, quite reliable. You really just need to replace the regulator piece. And what's happened is somewhere in here, these cables have, see if we can see here, these cables come free. And they look like they're attached good here and on the other end, but somewhere in this mechanism they break, and then if you take this apart, I suspect that the cable has kind of broken away in there, and that's why these things fail and need to be replaced from time to time. They seem to be good for about 20 years. Okay, we're getting there. Here's the old one with the motor on it. Here's the new one without the motor. So next, we'll take out these 3 bolts here. They're Torx T30. 1, 2, 3. T30. That will allow us to pull the motor assembly off and then mount it into the gear here and put the 3 Torx bolts back in. Okay, 1, 2, 3 Torx bolts out. Okay, now the motor will pull off. Like this. And we can just place it in the same position. Now the key is to line up the splines. It could take some wiggling to get this motor to pop into place in the new one, and then we'll just line it up and put the 3 Torx bolts back in from the other side. Okay, now with the motor back on, it's time to wiggle it back in. You just kind of got to play with it to get it fitting in there. And remember, there are 1, 2, 3 holes to line up. One, 2, and 3, like that. There. Now once you get that far, put on this little nut here to hold it there. And then the other 2 nuts to hold them on. 1 and 2. There. Okay, disconnected the tape up top. Now we're going to roll this window, or lower this window down rather, into the 2 channels here, which are loose. You can see here, just want it just to lower into that channel here, and then the other channel over here. Now you see I also marked with a Sharpie where the old regulator was mounted. So I've got it roughly mounted back where the old one was. Now we'll just take our 10mm and tighten up these 2 nuts here to tighten the regulator to the glass. Then we can start putting the door back together. Okay, those are tight. Put our plug back in to the motor. Now this can go back on. So really here the installation is the reverse of removal, right? We're just gonna put everything back together, put the white plugs back in, the screws, the clips, and then we can put the door panel on. Okay, so for these you just kind of push them back out like that so the little tit is out. In it goes, and you pop it in, and then it's solid. Tit in, pop. All right, with all the clips in and the 2 Torx bolts in and these little metal clips, it's time to bring the door panel back. Okay, now for the moment of truth. Turn the key on here. And So that's it. Of course, we'll put our torque screw back in here in that little plastic piece and pop the door lock piece on, but that's how you do the regulator in one of these Cadillacs. Early 2000s, mid 2000s. DTS, STS, DeVille, Seville, etc. That's it. This one worked, and it's not too bad. A couple of Torx bits, a 10mm wrench or socket, and some patience, and that's really all you need to do these. And the parts are fairly cheap. You don't need to replace the motor, just do the regulator. Well under $100 if you just replace that regulator and buy an aftermarket regulator online. And hopefully this helped you. Thanks for watching. Like I said, all 4 doors are pretty much the same basic idea. Check out my other videos, and thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps you get your Cadillac back on the road with an operating window.